Today, the 10-year is up about 5 basis points, Jodey Arrington. 10-year right now up 3.5 basis points at a level of 3.957%. The Fed has been clear rates are going to continue going higher. What does that mean for our debt? We talked earlier with Maya McGinnis, who said you're talking about $500 billion in interest rate expenses on the $31.5 trillion in debt we face right now.
Well, that $500 billion in 10 years is now projected to be $1.5 trillion. So we're going to triple our interest cost, which is more than we spend on national defense, veterans, homeland security combined. That's going to crowd out private capital, which is going to affect growth and wages. And it's going to put upward pressure on inflation and interest rates. So it's not just the unbridled spending, it's also the infinite borrowing and the unsustainable fiscal trajectory that we're on that's creating this malaise and this, what I believe will be a sustained economic recession, unfortunately.
So just to be clear, you said that the interest expense is going to triple, and it's going to be more than defense and discretionary?
Yes, interest expense was $500 billion this past year. It is projected to triple to $1.5 trillion annually in 10 years. We're at 120% debt to GDP today. That's gross debt. That's the most we've ever carried as a nation. And then the Penn Wharton study has us at 220% debt to GDP in 30 years, and CBO says that's $150+ trillion. We don't make it there without some intervention in common sense spending controls or some supply side relief where we're actually putting pro-work, pro-growth, pro-energy policies and getting our economy back on track again.
What's your priority now?
Well, to stop the spend. That's what started all this and ignited the 15 consecutive months of record inflation. January was the highest increase in inflation since June of last year. So we've got to rein in the spending. We've got a budget that's going to reset post-COVID at 22 spending levels. We'll control that by 1% growth over 10 years. There's savings there. And then we've got to look at the structural imbalance, the structural problem with our balance sheet in terms of the 70% of our budget, which is on auto spend. That's the mandatory spending programs. We've got a problem with labor in this country. Half of small businesses, according to NFIB, cannot fully staff up, and there's a good reason. We have policies in place on account of this administration that have disincentivized work. So that's one place to start to get the economy growing. By the way, 1% GDP over the 10-year budget window is $3 trillion. We've got to bend the spending curve, but we've got to grow the economy. There are common sense ways to do it. That'll be all laid out in our plan for our budget resolution.
Hey, Jodey Arrington, it's been all about the Fed. It's all on the Fed's back to rein in inflation because your colleagues keep on spending money. And you're talking about $5+ trillion in borrowing just in the last 2 years on Joe Biden's watch. Can you do anything about reining in the spending to control the debt in the face of an economy that is weakening?
Well, we have to. I'll tell you what's unacceptable is with this self-inflicted Biden recession that is punishing working families, many of whom are living paycheck to paycheck. Their real wages, their income is down significantly. We're talking about hundreds of dollars a month. They're just barely getting by. They're evaluating their finances. They are tightening their belts. They're reevaluating their spending habits. Meanwhile, we can't even get the president and Democrats to the table to talk about common sense spending controls or some fiscal reforms in this debt ceiling negotiation. That is unbelievable and totally reckless.